taking just names and context and turning them into engaged followers, customers, and maybe potential clients.
Welcome to the Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development.
Well, what is going on?
Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
It is hot, but we are wrapping up job search, and I'm excited for this one.
You know what? It's interesting. When you and I decided to do this, we had this content, kind of, ready to go. That was, really fresh, and we decided to go ahead and go to market with it. But what we didn't know when we started is that the country was going to head into a recession, and people were going to start getting laid off again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm thankful that, maybe there was a bigger purpose, and maybe we were kind of getting some ideas and strategies out there for people who might need it.
Yeah. I'm seeing more and more and more now that we're talking about it. I guess it's kind of like, you buy a red Camaro, and then you get out on the road and you're like, oh, where did all these red Camaros come from? So now on social media, I'm seeing so much more of people looking for assistance. And it's kind of like, it's right here, guys, so hoping,
Wow.
Some people are grabbing a hold, taking a listen and gleaning off of your.
Interesting. So you're hearing, let's talk about that for just a second. So
Yeah.
on Fit, you're on social media,
Yeah.
40 times more than me, I think. But so you're actually hearing people say, yeah, hey, my husband was laid off, or hey,
Yeah.
I'm looking for this. Really?
I see it all the time,
Okay.
and there's a lot of spousal support. Hey, my husband or my wife or whoever,
Mhm.
this happened. Does anybody know anybody? That's one of the sections. Or, hey, I'm here. Does anybody know anybody in this field? And it's like, okay, that's one of our conversations. So I'm seeing a lot of our individual conversations highlighted across what people are asking, which is good. It means that, your 9 modules, they're right on point,
Wow. Well, it's important, and I hope a lot of people are able to be helped through the process. So the last one, so to kind of recap, last week we talked about job search interviewing. It's actually our biggest module. So I will say that, if you go, and by the way, I think, Beastmode and I always recommend this, but if you guys can please view this on YouTube, because if you don't, I think you'll get a lot out of it if you're driving, and if that's all you can do, it's cool.
Yeah.
Because I do read each bullet point. But I do think there's something helpful about seeing the slides and being able to kind of read along and hear what we have to say.
Yeah.
So the YouTube, we love all of our Spotify and Apple podcast people, and that's awesome. And that's how I consume mine too, by the way. But yeah, for this series, it might be helpful to have the visuals.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was interviewing last week, and then this week is job search storytelling. It's a shorter module. So what we talked about doing in our prep is maybe going and providing a few summary thoughts at the end. So I think that was a great idea. So job search storytelling is helping you to really think about creating some memorable example stories out of your work history. And you have more than you think in your work history. Even if you're coming right out of college, you actually have more experiences than you maybe have top of mind. So we're going to help you try to think through that a little bit. And the first one is prepping your story. And for prepping your story, something that I did during my job search was I created this spreadsheet, as you can see here, with a category and what was the category from my job experience, right? This is not like, hey, here's what my skills are. This is basically a map that goes back in time and unpacks actual job stuff that I was involved with in one way or another. Maybe I built something, or I taught something, or I just learned something, or whatever it may be. And so I created these kind of like a spreadsheet, okay? And create yours however you want. This is a format you could use though if you're looking at the visual there. But one of them was category. And so one of the categories for me as a sales manager was equipping the sales team, right? Another one was, how do I do a program or something around customer growth? And then the tactic name was exactly what did. What did I do that is? So, in one case, I brought in a new CRM system and I replaced, that old system with Salesforce and, these different things. The company, I think I blanked out for the purpose of these slides. And then I kind of put, what was the situation? What I gave a little bit of background on what it was. And then, what was the task? Or a different label might be, what did I do? Or what was the mission? And then the action, oh yeah, okay, so the action is what I did, and then here was the result. So anyway, this is probably over engineered. I think you could almost come up with like 3 columns for yourself. What was the situation, what'd you do, and what was the result, right? 6 like that SAR. I think I've even heard that before, actually. Situation, action, result. So I added some extra stuff because I like to do buckets and be able to sort things. And frankly, I needed something to work on when I was out of a job in the pandemic, and I wanted to engineer something this way. That's just kind of my personality. So anyway, I think if you do I think if you do a writing exercise and you start to unpack what were some of the types of things that I've done, and then you kind of write down a little bit about that history. What's really cool about that is you could actually use this as a tool to send to somebody that you're interviewing with. That would be fine. I never did that, but you could certainly do that, or maybe like simplify it and do a simple version of it. But what I did was it gave me stories that I could pull up at an instant from even 10 or 12, 15 years ago. And so it basically brought my history back to me. So because during an interview, you have to be kind of, I think biblically they call it being instant in season and out of season. So it's a similar idea here where you're having to be ready, Johnny on the spot, Susie on the spot, with here's a story that relates to what they're asking about.
Yeah.
So that's the general idea of prepping your story. So it's a little bit of work. I mean, I did spend a few hours on it, but again, pandemic was a lonely time, so I had time on my hands. So do the writing exercise of problems you've solved to help you remember the things that you've done. These experiences, by really thinking about them and writing them down, will help you have relevant stories during your interview. And so I think it really helped me a lot. And then I was able to, once you have this foundational work, you can also do some of the other, like story examples that we talked about in other modules. But this is almost like the research part of it that drives some of those assets.
I never
yeah.
thought of just kind of laying them out like that.
Mm.
I mean, it's been a long time since I have been interviewed in that capacity, but I could totally see, because you're going to get asked, hey, give me a story of whenever you did this, and you're just like, in the moment, you're just like trying to go as far back, and
Exactly.
And I mean, it would be great to just have, because you could have it if you're in a face-to-face, you can just have it in your notes. If you're on Zoom, you can just have it pulled up, and I totally see the value of that.
It really was interesting because it was a little bit scary in a way, of all the things that I had forgotten. You don't realize, and I feel like we beat ourselves up, and I know, that those of you who are faith-based on the podcast, you would say that, the enemy would beat you up, right? If you're coming from a secular perspective, you would just say that, your negative thoughts beat you up. And I don't have a preference, because I think it could be both, actually. But we do forget the good things. We really do. And I think it's a confidence booster for you during your interview process if you remember that you have fought through some things and you have built some things, and what you did mattered. And I want somebody to hear that, and that for some reason that's calling out to me. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I could, and I'm just kind of racking my brain as we're sitting here, but I could see like how maybe you're in an interview setting, you have a top 5 list of achievements that you're looking to discuss, and maybe the interviewer only asks you one, and then towards the end you could just say, I know that you asked me about one, here's some bullet points that so you're almost giving them the recap and then allowing them to see the other things. So it's almost like a backdoor way of kind of sliding a little bit more info in there. So I could see that as super helpful,
That
you
really
know,
is.
because
I
they may
mean,
just read it getting up from the desk and walking back, but if they can see, man, these are 5 bullet points, you know.
mhm.
So
I think anything you can do to tell your story, to document your story, to share your story, you know, people live and operate on stories. We think we operate on evidence, but we don't. We really operate on really stories. You know, we do operate on emotions and other things as well. But stories are a fundamental way that we communicate and we make decisions, we make recommendations, and that we relate to one another. So having your story written down, and I think it's going to be redemptive, beast mode. I think when people do this,
yeah,
people are going to say, I'm not worthless. Yeah, I got laid off, but I'm not worthless. And look at what I
yeah,
did. And
yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
some people hearing this, the sound of our voices today, need to hear that.
Yeah, and I wasn't even thinking about that aspect, but that totally makes sense too. You know, whenever you're
You saw what I
preparing,
went through. Yeah.
yeah, when you're preparing, and then you can, you know, honestly go back and look and say, you know, I did some good things, you know, whether it was at the last position or the position, like I have something of value to give to the next. Wasn't even thinking about that, but yeah,
Mm. Yeah, and we all need that confidence boost. And you know, I hope you guys have someone in your life that can pull some of those things out. And I think you need to be willing to have a vulnerable conversation during the job search period of time and be able to talk to someone. I think both of us we would be very happy to, by the way, have you on the podcast and to talk about your
yeah,
history. I think that'd be really helpful to you actually in your job search. But you know, if you don't have somebody that can help you define your story and remember your worth and remember what you've done, I think it's, you know, it is a harder process. So the second thing is to think about, you know, is what did you do? You know, when telling your story, your interviewers will resonate well with stories of things that you faced and also things that you did. So describe the problem, what you did, and what the result is, right? So I kind of gave you a little chart on the last slide, but this slide is just in general, just saying at a high level, you know, what did you do? Tell your story.
yeah,
And then I think this is one thing that I wanted to really do a lot. And I actually had one recruiter not vibe with this at all. But mostly I think this really worked. And I really wanted to focus on communicating my passion, because your passion is true. Your passion is coming from a place of your truth, right? I don't believe in sort of like mushy, what's your truth? I really don't believe in that. But when it comes to things that you really vibe with and things that excite you, that is either true or not true for you. So let's say, for example, you love to, you know, build things with your hands, right? Maybe that's what you're really passionate. And you have a reason for that, right? Maybe it's because your grandfather built birdhouses in his garage all of your life and sold them all over the place and was famous for that. And mine was, by the way, for that exact thing. And so I might have picked up the habit of building things. By the way, I actually have a little bit of a desire to do that because of that example, which is really special. But you know, you may have a story like that. You may have a passion, so if you can communicate why you're in sales or why you're in nursing or why you're in marketing or why you're in PR, and you have a reason for that, you're kind of like Beastman talks about your why, knowing your why,
yeah,
communicating your why. I think that is going to really come through.
yeah. Whatever recruiter wasn't vibing with that, I vehemently disagree.
Hmm.
You, I mean, if you come across like, I don't just know nursing, I don't just know sales, but I love it, and it's a
Hmm.
part of who I am. It's way more because your buy-in to the position is totally different. You know, I'm not just looking at it as a commodity for me to make some dollars.
Hmm.
I, you know, and so as an interviewer or as an employer, I would be way more geared to somebody who's passionate about the job itself, not just about, you know, meeting a need. You know,
It's you know, I think we all, So, I'll watch clips of a motivational speaker sometime, whatever it might be. I haven't watched Tony Robbins a lot. I did watch his Netflix special, which I liked a lot. But someone like that, or someone, different, or some of the Jordan B. Peterson stuff that he's really challenging, people with being responsible and speaking the truth, and, just all these different people who have these things that they're communicating with. You really pick up on the passion of that. And so I think in your interview, if you're able to communicate why you're passionate about that, that's going to be unarguable, and people are going to appreciate that a lot, versus you just answering coldly and dispassionately their questions. Like, that's not even the same experience for me as a manager interviewing you. Whereas if you tell me a story and then you make sure to share what you're really interested in with this job, I mean, it doesn't even compare, right? You're immediately in the top 3, period. You really are. So communicate your passion, have some key things to say about your motivations and your passions that relate to the role that you're interviewing for.
Yeah.
And by the way, although that is a very real thing and a very warm thing and a very personal thing, even preparing for that is a good idea. I mean, you might be able to wing it and pull it out of the air, but I think it's better to just think about why. Let me think about that I can't remember the name of that company that I talked about last week that I interviewed with, that I came up with the acronym. Remember that? I kind of came up with this special. They basically train companies on how to, or they train people within companies on how to use the cloud, the cloud infrastructure out there. And I showed some passion. I showed a lot of passion in the interview, but I had prepared for that. So I'm not saying go in there and wing it and be excited, right? That is like that's plan C. Plan A is a very scripted and even creative discussion of your passion for the job. And plan B is at least be able to talk about your passion for the job. Plan C is just show some passion in the interview. That's not very good when you could have spent even 10 minutes thinking, writing down 3 sentences, figuring out 3 crisp sentences that you really believe in, right? And they'll smell it if you don't. So you want to make sure it's truthful. Don't be passionate about being the warehouse manager and then you have a fake answer, right? You better be passionate about that, or come up with, dig until you find something that speaks to you about that.
Yeah. And as you're kind of walking that through, my way to relate this, if people aren't catching on to the value, this is the same kind of mentality I take when I talk about posting on social media. Get a calendar, write down, say on Mondays, I'm going to talk about my why. On Tuesdays, I'm going to give a tip. On Wednesdays, I'm going to do this. And you're just putting it out there. That way, on that day, the actual day, you can be spontaneous, but I'm spontaneous on that topic. I've already decided the topic, but now I've narrowed down my spontaneity. And so what you can do is you have these bullets, and what makes you spontaneous is which one am I going to use? And then that's when you come across passionate. So if you feel like, I don't want to be too scripted because then it's going to look bad. No, the scriptedness makes you look prepared. And then the spontaneity is the passion behind, because now I've dug a little deep. Now that well is already primed and pumped. So whenever it's time to go, it's just a geyser. And not just
50 people should rewind that right now. You don't even know how good that was.
So,
yeah. No, you don't even know. I mean, honestly, that you made me, and I know you're talking about the social media example, but you actually made me think about I know you're relating it to the interview process and preparation, but I actually was thinking, gosh, I've never heard it said that clearly about preparing for, messaging on social media and things of that nature. Yeah, that was awesome. And I think it is so relevant to this here as well. So preparing those key things doesn't mean that you're dry and unexciting. It allows you to be spontaneous and warm within that, because you already have your message ready, so you can focus on the feeling and the style and the delivery. So yeah, I thought that was incredible. That was really good. So figure out the lessons from the negative. So listen, guys, guys and gals, I, I had to listen. I'm not gonna lie, I had a hard time in some ways with this, and I did lose a job. I did one thing I was interviewing for, because I talked negative apparently about the employer. I don't really remember what I said. It must not have been too negative because I didn't remember it. But apparently I went a little bit negative because listen, we have war wounds from our work life. We do.
Yeah.
And Beastmode, I know you've had, I mean, honestly, to be honest,
Yeah.
since I've known you,
Plenty.
you've had one or two.
Yeah.
Work life is going to cause a couple of, war wounds from time to time. And even in the pandemic, I've had two punches in
Yeah.
the face, like hard ones.
Yeah.
And so, if not more, and then the job search itself was hard. So, you can either be hurt and screwed up, or you can figure out the lessons from the negative. And that's what this slide is about. And I had to think about that a lot, and in my case, now Beastmode and I won't push this on you, but we tend to pray about this kind of thing too.
Yeah.
And that's really a super therapeutic thing. It's a very meditative exercise, but however you do it, figure out the lessons from the negative stuff that happened, because work life has challenges. There's no doubt that's going to happen. But you don't want to bring out those negatives in interviews. And your story can benefit if you turn those negative things into transformative lessons. I'm thinking of a particular story right now that I've told Beast Mode about, that I one time did an exercise. This is a couple jobs ago, but I did a particular study and a particular exercise that took me maybe 23, 25 hours. I don't know. Took me a couple of weeks of my nights and weekends. And I knew that executive management could not hear me. Even though I went and I got research and I came up with all these ideas for the company, I knew that they could not hear me. And I did it anyway with their permission, but I knew that they would not take action on what I said. And they didn't. Not a thing, not a peep. And not even really appreciative for my sacrifice, to be honest. But the reason why I did it was because I understood that, and so this is my transformative lesson from the negative, okay? My transformative lesson is like the company deserved my best. The company deserved the insights. They deserve the opportunity to hear someone giving them fresh perspectives, giving them ideas, and at least giving them the option of changing in the areas that they needed to. And then I got the benefit, and I deserved that, mini college class that it required for me to go do that research and document that and brainstorm that and structure it and make it pretty and do all the things, right? It's basically like a college, is way deeper than a college presentation. It's almost like a college final level kind of thing, because it took me a lot of time. And what I've told Beastmode before is I've never, I knowingly did that and I've never regretted it. And I still have that content and I'm proud of it. And so I feel like what we can do is we can give, so the lesson is that, sometimes we give our best, and the company deserves that. And we deserve that for ourselves as well. And you never handicap yourself by not trying something hard. And you never handicap yourself by not trying something that maybe the other person can't hear right now. But you do your best, and you're going to grow from that, and you're going to benefit, and you never lose anything from hard work. And so that's one example of a transformative lesson. So you may have had things that you've been through that stubbed your toe or that hurt your feelings, and that's a real thing. I mean, I get my feelings hurt too. So you may have that happen, but if you can think about what is the upside from that, I think it'll really help you in your interview process to explain road bumps that you've gone through, or a job loss that you've gone through, or a setback of some kind. And you can really communicate that with compassion and with wisdom, and also in a way that is coming across as healthy, instead of someone who's coming across as critical or negative.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything. It makes sense. But I will tell you that we have talked about it before too, is that there's not a downside in doing it. You're going to benefit personally. You're going to be able to say, I cultivated, I did this, even if nobody listened to me, I still did it. And so it's hard to come to that conclusion though, and just say, I know I'm not going to be heard, but this company deserves somebody to do the work, and they deserve my best effort. It's very difficult. And but
and I can't, you know, I'm not at the end of my life. I can't tell you when I'm, you know, I hope 95, you know, I can't tell you how I'm going to feel about the way I'm recommending you live right now. I can't tell you the outcome of that, because there's an element of faith in being positive. There's an element of hope in having courage in these matters, guys. So I can't tell you, because I can't fast forward my life 44 years. I can't do that. So all I can tell you is, if this speaks to your heart, then you should listen to that.
Yeah.
So believe it or not, that's maybe the shortest module. I think there's not even a question that's the shortest one. But job search storytelling: prepare your story, study your past achievements, communicate your passions related to the job, turn your negatives into a lesson and a story. And if you do that, I think you'll benefit from it. So yeah, I think that's a few little thoughts around your storytelling.
I love it. And it's important, guys. It again, as we've said with all of these, some of these may be outside of the box. Some of these you may not have ever thought about. Some of these you may be cautious about. But if any of these you want to give a whirl at, I think this one's a good one to ensure that you write at least one, maybe two things down ahead of time. And just, I mean, again, I hope I pray you only go on one interview. But if you don't, maybe you'll see the value after just the first one and say, man, it was great to be a little bit more prepared. It was great to not have to wing it. It takes the anxiety off, you know, all those things. But listen, yeah, I'm looking forward to the recap and just seeing see you compartmentalize 10 weeks into 10 minutes or less.
Probably you're going to be a zero, but there are some heroes who are making some very quick moves as well. So happy to start either way with heroes or zeros. Let's follow your lead.